In a world where every street corner watches you, every phone call gets logged, and every hotel keycard swipe creates a digital fingerprint, you'd think murder would be impossible to hide. Yet, on a rainy Thursday night in Dubai, Prince Idris Al Zahra believed his royal status could shield him from the all-seeing eyes of modern surveillance. He was catastrophically wrong. Have you ever told a lie so big that you had to keep building on it? Have you ever thought you could get away with something because of who you are or who you know? Most of us have been there. Maybe it was calling in sick when you weren't or telling your parents you were somewhere you shouldn't have been. But what happens when that lie involves betraying your fiancée with her own sister? What happens when that betrayal turns deadly? Do you know someone who's ever used their position of power to manipulate others? Someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them because of their wealth or connections? Well, buckle up, because today's story will show you exactly why that kind of thinking can lead to your complete destruction. Here's the harsh reality. In today's hyper-connected world, there is no such thing as the perfect crime. Every move you make leaves a trace. Every lie you tell creates evidence. Every attempt to cover up your tracks only digs your grave deeper. Prince Idris Al Zahra learned this lesson in the most brutal way possible when his secret affair with Mira al-Hashemi, his fiancée's younger sister, ended with blood on his hands and a digital trail that would expose every sickening detail of his deception. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment crime of passion. This was a calculated betrayal that shattered two powerful families and sent shockwaves through Gulf high society. We're talking about a man who had everything: wealth, power, respect, a beautiful fiancée named Soraya al-Hashemi from one of the region's most influential trading families. Yet none of that was enough for him. So what drove this prince to throw away his entire future for a forbidden relationship? How did cutting-edge surveillance technology track his every move on that fatal night? And most importantly, how did a single hotel room become the stage for a murder so perfectly documented that even the most expensive legal team couldn't save him? By the end of this video, you'll discover how hotel keycards, cell tower pings, DNA analysis, and hundreds of security cameras created an inescapable web of evidence. You'll learn why Prince Idris's attempts to cover his tracks only made his guilt more obvious. And you'll understand why sometimes the people we trust most are the ones capable of the greatest betrayal. But first, let me take you back to where this nightmare began, with what looked like the perfect royal engagement announcement. When His Highness Prince Idris Al Zahra announced his engagement to Soraya al-Hashemi, the news didn't just make headlines. It rewrote the social calendar of the entire Gulf region. This wasn't your typical celebrity engagement where paparazzi fight for exclusive photos. This was a union between two of the most powerful dynasties in the Middle East, complete with diplomatic implications and billion-dollar business mergers hanging in the balance. The al-Hashemi family had built their trading empire over 4 generations, controlling shipping routes that connected Asia to Europe through the strategic ports of the Arabian Peninsula. Their warehouses stored everything from rare spices to cutting-edge electronics, and their influence extended far beyond commerce into politics, real estate, and international relations. When Soraya's father agreed to this marriage alliance, he wasn't just giving away his daughter. He was cementing a partnership that would reshape regional power dynamics for decades to come. The engagement party itself was a masterclass in controlled opulence. Held at the Al Zahra family's private palace compound, the event hosted over 800 guests, each one carefully vetted by security teams that ran background checks more thorough than most government agencies. Crystal chandeliers imported from Austria cast warm light over marble floors that had been polished to mirror perfection. The guest list read like a who's who of Middle Eastern royalty, international diplomats, and business moguls whose combined net worth could fund small countries. Soraya looked absolutely radiant that night, wearing a custom-designed gown that had taken 6 months to create. The dress featured intricate gold embroidery that told the story of her family's trading history, with patterns representing the various countries where they conducted business. Her engagement ring, a 12-carat pink diamond surrounded by smaller white diamonds, had been personally selected by Prince Idris during a private viewing at one of Geneva's most exclusive jewelry houses. The prince himself commanded attention wherever he moved through the crowd. At 32 years old, he possessed the kind of natural charisma that made people lean in when he spoke. His education at Oxford and Harvard Business School had given him a sophisticated understanding of global markets, while his military training with the Royal Guard had instilled discipline and strategic thinking. He spoke 5 languages fluently and could discuss everything from ancient poetry to modern cryptocurrency with equal expertise. But beneath all the glamour and carefully choreographed perfection, something was already beginning to crack. Palace insiders later revealed that Prince Idris had seemed distracted during the engagement ceremony itself, while Soraya beamed with genuine happiness, accepting congratulations from family, friends, and distant relatives. The prince's attention kept wandering to other parts of the room. His responses to well-wishers were polite but mechanical, as if his mind was somewhere else entirely. The official engagement photos, taken by a renowned photographer who had captured royal weddings across Europe, showed a couple that looked perfect on paper. Soraya's hand rested gently on the prince's arm, her smile bright and confident. Prince Idris stood tall and regal, his expression serious but warm. The images were distributed to select media outlets and would later be displayed in museums as historical documents of this significant union. What the cameras didn't capture, however, were the private moments between the formal photo sessions. Several guests noticed that Prince Idris spent considerable time in conversation with various members of the Al-Hashemi family, particularly the younger generation who had recently returned from studying abroad. His interest in their experiences, their perspectives on modern life, and their plans for the future seemed unusually intense for someone who should have been focused entirely on his bride-to-be. The engagement announcement dominated social media for weeks, with hashtags trending across multiple platforms and fashion bloggers analyzing every detail of Soraya's dress and jewelry. International news outlets covered the story as both a romantic fairy tale and a significant geopolitical development. Business analysts predicted that the merger of these two family empires would create new opportunities for trade partnerships and economic growth throughout the region. Yet even as the world celebrated this union of power and prestige, the seeds of destruction were already being planted. Because sometimes the most dangerous threats come from within the very families we're supposed to trust most. 3 months after the engagement celebration, Mira Al-Hashemi stepped off a British Airways flight at Dubai International Airport, carrying nothing but a leather satchel and a head full of revolutionary ideas. At 26, she was 2 years younger than her sister Soraya, but her time studying international law at King's College London had given her a sharp edge that cut through traditional expectations like a blade through silk. Where Soraya embodied grace and diplomatic charm, Mira possessed an intellectual intensity that made people uncomfortable. She questioned everything: family traditions, business practices, social hierarchies, and especially the arranged marriages that had defined her family's legacy for generations. Her professors in London had praised her thesis on women's rights in corporate governance, and she'd returned home with plans to revolutionize how the Al-Hashemi trading empire operated in the modern world. The first time Prince Idris encountered Mira was at a private art gallery opening in downtown Dubai. The event was meant to showcase contemporary Middle Eastern artists, and Soraya had insisted that her fiancé attend to demonstrate his support for cultural development. While Soraya mingled with the gallery owners and art collectors, making the kind of polite conversation that oils the wheels of high society, Prince Idris found himself drawn to a heated debate happening near a controversial sculpture. Mira was arguing with a prominent art critic about the role of political expression in modern art, her voice passionate but controlled. She wasn't shouting or making a scene. Instead, she was systematically dismantling her opponent's arguments with the precision of a surgeon. Prince Idris watched, fascinated, as she referenced everything from ancient Persian poetry to contemporary European philosophy, building her case with an intellectual rigor he rarely encountered in his social circle. When the critic finally walked away in frustration, Prince Idris approached her. "That was impressive," he said. "Most people would have given up after the first counterargument." Mira looked him up and down, clearly recognizing who he was but showing none of the deference he was accustomed to receiving. "Most people aren't used to defending their ideas," she replied. "They're used to having them accepted without question." That conversation lasted 3 hours. They discussed everything from the challenges of modernizing traditional societies to the ethics of inherited wealth and power. Prince Idris found himself sharing thoughts and doubts he'd never expressed to anyone, while Mira challenged every assumption he'd built his life upon. By the time Soraya came looking for them, both had forgotten that anyone else existed in the room. The dangerous attraction began innocently enough. Prince Idris started asking Soraya about her sister's opinions on various topics, claiming he was interested in her fresh perspective on family business matters. He began attending more Al-Hashemi family gatherings, always finding reasons to engage Mira in lengthy discussions about politics, philosophy, and the future of their region. Mira, for her part, was initially resistant to the prince's attention. She understood the implications better than anyone: her sister's happiness, her family's reputation, and the delicate balance of power that held their world together. But Prince Idris was unlike any man she'd ever met. Beneath his royal title and inherited privileges, she discovered someone who was genuinely hungry for intellectual stimulation and meaningful conversation. Their first private meeting happened by accident. Mira was working late in her father's office, reviewing contracts for a new shipping partnership, when Prince Idris arrived for what he thought was a scheduled meeting with her father. The older man had been delayed at another appointment, leaving them alone in the mahogany-paneled office surrounded by centuries of family history. What was supposed to be a brief wait turned into a 4-hour conversation about everything they'd been thinking but couldn't say in public. Prince Idris confessed his doubts about the engagement, his feeling that he was living someone else's life, his fear that he would never find genuine connection within the constraints of royal expectations. Mira shared her frustration with being seen as nothing more than a bargaining chip in family alliances, her dreams of using her education to create real change, and her growing certainty that traditional marriage would destroy everything she'd worked to become. By the time her father arrived, they had crossed a line that neither could uncross. The attraction between them was no longer just intellectual. It had become something deeper, more dangerous, and completely impossible to ignore. The secret phone calls started a week later. Prince Idris would call Mira late at night, using a burner phone he'd purchased with cash from an electronics store in a part of the city where no one would recognize him. They would talk for hours about books, ideas, and dreams, their conversations becoming increasingly intimate as the weeks passed. But here's something you need to understand about forbidden relationships: they never stay secret forever. And when they involve people with this much power and influence, the consequences don't just destroy individuals. They destroy entire families, entire legacies, and sometimes entire lives. Speaking of consequences, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, what are you waiting for? I'm literally giving you the most shocking true crime stories from around the world, completely free, and you can't even hit a button? Come on, show some appreciation for the research that goes into these cases. Subscribe now, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this story. Thursday, March 15th started like any other day in the Al-Zahra Palace. Prince Idris attended his usual morning briefing with palace advisors, reviewed documents related to upcoming diplomatic visits, and had lunch with his father to discuss a new infrastructure project. To everyone around him, he appeared calm and focused. But beneath the surface, a storm was building that would change everything. At 3:47 p.m., Mira sent him a message through their encrypted communication app. "We need to talk. Tonight. This can't continue." The prince stared at his phone screen for several minutes before responding, "Marina Hotel, room 1247. I'll arrange everything." What Prince Idris didn't know was that Mira had spent the previous 3 days wrestling with an impossible decision. She had discovered something that would shatter not just their secret relationship, but potentially destroy both families involved. Her sister Soraya had confided in her about wedding plans, about her dreams for the future, about how much she loved Prince Idris and how excited she was to start their life together. The guilt was eating Mira alive. At 6:30 p.m., Mira checked into the Marina Hotel using a variation of her maiden name, Mira Hassan, instead of Mira Al-Hashemi. She paid cash for the room and specifically requested privacy, late checkout, and a room facing away from the main street. The hotel staff, accustomed to discretion when dealing with high-profile guests, asked no questions and made note of her preferences in their system. The room she selected was on the 12th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the marina's calm waters. City lights reflected off the surface like scattered diamonds, creating an almost romantic atmosphere that would soon become the backdrop for something horrific. Mira spent the evening pacing the room, rehearsing what she would say, how she would end their relationship before it destroyed everyone she cared about. Meanwhile, Prince Idris was making his own preparations. At 8:15 p.m., he dismissed his security detail, claiming he needed a quiet evening to review important documents. He changed from his formal attire into dark casual clothes, jeans, a black sweater, and a baseball cap that would help conceal his identity. At 10:45 p.m., he left the palace through a service entrance that connected to the underground parking garage. The vehicle he chose was a dark sedan registered to a palace logistics company, one of dozens of cars used for unofficial business that wouldn't immediately be traced back to the royal family. The license plate was legitimate but belonged to a fleet that rarely attracted attention from traffic enforcement or security cameras. At exactly 12:10 a.m., the sedan pulled up to the Marina Hotel's valet entrance. Prince Idris stepped out, keeping his head down and his cap pulled low over his face. Instead of walking through the main lobby where he might be recognized, he took a service corridor that led directly to the elevator bank. His knowledge of this route suggested he had planned this meeting carefully, possibly even visiting the hotel beforehand to map out the most discreet path to Myra's room. The hotel's security system, part of Dubai's comprehensive surveillance network, captured every step of his journey. Camera 47B recorded him entering through the service door. Camera 52A showed him waiting for the elevator. Camera 61C captured him exiting on the 12th floor and walking toward room 1247. At 12:18 a.m., the electronic keycard system logged his entry into Myra's room using a card she had given him earlier. Inside the suite, Mira was waiting with a notebook full of questions and a heart full of conflicted emotions. She had written down everything she wanted to say, every reason why their relationship had to end, every argument for why they needed to think about the people who would be hurt by their actions. But when Prince Idris walked through that door, all her careful planning began to crumble. The conversation started quietly. Hotel guests in adjacent rooms later reported hearing normal speaking voices, nothing that seemed alarming or unusual. But as the minutes passed, those voices began to rise. The discussion that was supposed to bring closure instead became an argument about love, duty, family loyalty, and the impossible choices that come with power and privilege. At 1:23 a.m., a guest in room 1245 called the front desk to complain about raised voices coming from the neighboring suite. The desk clerk made a note in the system but decided not to intervene immediately, as the hotel's policy was to allow guests privacy unless there were clear signs of danger or property damage. By 1:45 a.m., the voices had stopped. The hallway fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning system and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. What happened in those final moments would later be reconstructed through forensic evidence. But the emotional truth of that confrontation died with Mira al-Hashemi. At 2:09 a.m., the keycard system registered a second entry into room 1247. This time, however, it wasn't Prince Idris entering. It was someone leaving and then returning, possibly to retrieve something or to stage the scene in a way that would minimize evidence. The electronic lock recorded the failed attempt at 2:03 a.m., suggesting that whoever was trying to enter was either nervous, hurried, or unfamiliar with how the keycard system worked. 2 hours of complete silence followed. At 4:15 a.m., a housekeeper knocked on the door for an early morning service request that had been placed the previous day. When no one answered, she used her master key to peer inside. What she saw would haunt her for the rest of her life. The dark sedan was captured leaving the hotel's underground garage at 2:30 a.m., its diplomatic plates clearly visible under the bright security lighting. But this time, the car was empty except for the driver. When Dubai's Criminal Investigation Department arrived at the Marina Hotel at 4:47 a.m., they weren't just responding to a murder. They were stepping into one of the most comprehensively documented crimes in the region's history. What Prince Idris didn't realize was that his every move had been tracked, recorded, and stored by a surveillance infrastructure so advanced that it made hiding virtually impossible. The hotel room itself told a story that no amount of royal privilege could rewrite. Myra's body was found on the bedroom floor, her notebook scattered nearby with pages torn and crumpled. The forensic team immediately noticed defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicating she had fought desperately for her life. But it was the microscopic evidence that would prove most damaging to the prince's future. Under Myra's fingernails, investigators discovered skin cells that didn't belong to her. The DNA extraction process, performed at Dubai's state-of-the-art forensic laboratory, took less than 48 hours to complete. When the results came back, they matched genetic samples that had been collected from Prince Idris during a routine medical examination just 6 months earlier. A standard procedure for all members of the royal family. The pillowcase on the hotel bed contained trace fibers from a very specific type of cashmere blend. This wasn't ordinary fabric. It was a limited edition material used by only 3 luxury clothing manufacturers worldwide. Investigators traced the fibers to a sweater that had been custom-made for Prince Idris by a high-end tailor in Milan. The sweater was later found in his private wardrobe, with microscopic tears consistent with a violent struggle. But the physical evidence was just the beginning. Dubai's Oyun surveillance program had captured the prince's movements with frightening precision. Traffic cameras positioned at 47 different intersections recorded the sedan's license plate as it traveled from the palace to the Marina district. The automated number plate recognition system cross-referenced this data with the hotel's valet logs, creating a timeline that was accurate to the minute. The prince's biggest mistake was using a burner phone to coordinate the meeting. While he thought this would provide anonymity, cell tower data told a different story. The phone had pinged towers near the marina between midnight and 2 a.m., creating a digital footprint that placed him at the scene during the exact window when the murder occurred. Telecommunications analysts were able to map his location with accuracy down to a 50-meter radius. Even more damaging was the discovery of the phone itself. 3 days after the murder, a maintenance worker found it buried in a shallow hole at a desert turnoff 30 kilometers outside the city. The SIM card was traced to a prepaid batch purchased from an electronics store in a working-class neighborhood where Prince Idris had never been seen before. Security footage from the store showed him making the purchase while wearing sunglasses and a surgical mask, a disguise that only made him more suspicious. The hotel's internal surveillance system provided the most compelling evidence of all. With over 1,500 cameras covering every angle of the property, investigators could track Prince Idris's movements from the moment he arrived until the moment he left. Camera feeds showed him entering through the service corridor, taking the elevator to the 12th floor, and walking directly to Myra's room without hesitation, proving he knew exactly where he was going. The keycard logs were equally damning. Electronic records showed that Myra's room key had been used 4 times that night, twice by Mira herself, once by Prince Idris to enter, and once more at 2:09 a.m. The final entry lasted exactly 11 minutes, just enough time to attempt to clean up or remove evidence. The failed keycard attempt at 2:03 a.m. suggested panic, nervousness, or unfamiliarity with the hotel's electronic lock system. Inside the prince's leased vehicle, forensic specialists discovered more trace evidence linking him to the crime scene. Fibers matching those found in the hotel suite were embedded in the driver's seat fabric. The car's GPS telematics system, accessed through a legal warrant served on the leasing company, showed its exact location throughout the night. The data confirmed that the vehicle had been parked at the Marina Hotel for exactly the same duration as the keycard logs indicated Prince Idris was inside. What made this case truly unprecedented was how multiple surveillance systems worked together to create an unbreakable chain of evidence. Traffic cameras tracked his route, cell towers pinpointed his location, hotel security recorded his movements, keycard systems logged his access, and forensic analysis connected him physically to the victim. Each piece of evidence supported and reinforced the others, creating a web of proof that no legal team could untangle. The investigation team realized they weren't just solving a murder, they were demonstrating how modern technology had fundamentally changed the nature of criminal investigation. In a city where artificial intelligence analyzed thousands of camera feeds simultaneously, where every electronic transaction left a permanent record, and where DNA analysis could be completed in hours rather than weeks, the idea of the perfect crime had become obsolete. By the way, if you're still watching this video, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see how global our audience really is. And seriously, if you haven't subscribed yet, what's your excuse? I'm literally breaking down the most fascinating criminal cases from around the world, and you can't even click a button to support the channel? Come on, show some love and hit that subscribe button right now. The arrest of Prince Idris Al-Zahra sent shockwaves through the highest levels of Middle Eastern society. At 6:30 a.m. on March 18th, just 3 days after Myra's murder, a team of plainclothes investigators arrived at the palace with an arrest warrant signed by Dubai's chief prosecutor. The prince was taken into custody without incident, though palace sources later revealed he had been expecting this moment since the investigation began. What followed was a masterclass in modern forensic investigation. The Dubai Police Crime Scene Unit, equipped with technology that rivaled any law enforcement agency in the world, had built a case so comprehensive that even the most expensive legal defense couldn't find cracks in their evidence chain. Every piece of physical evidence had been photographed, catalogued, and analyzed using techniques that would have been science fiction just a decade earlier. The forensic laboratory's DNA analysis didn't just confirm Prince Idris's presence at the crime scene. It told the story of exactly what happened in that hotel room. The skin cells under Myra's fingernails contained enough genetic material to determine that she had scratched her attacker with considerable force. The pattern of bruising on her neck was consistent with manual strangulation, and the pressure marks indicated sustained force applied by someone significantly stronger than the victim. Telecommunications experts presented evidence that was equally damning. The burner phone's call detail records showed a pattern of communication between Prince Idris and Mira that had intensified in the weeks leading up to her death. Text messages recovered from the device revealed increasing desperation on both sides, Mira wanting to end their relationship, and Prince Idris becoming more possessive and controlling with each exchange. The hotel's security footage was analyzed frame by frame using advanced video enhancement software. Investigators could track Prince Idris's movements with such precision that they knew he had paused for exactly 23 seconds outside Myra's door before using the keycard to enter. His body language in those moments, the way he looked up and down the hallway, the nervous adjustment of his cap, suggested someone who knew he was about to do something terrible. Perhaps most compelling was the timeline reconstruction. Using data from multiple sources, traffic cameras, cell towers, keycard logs, and witness statements, investigators created a minute-by-minute account of the prince's movements on the night of the murder. The timeline was so detailed that it included the exact moment he purchased coffee from a 24-hour convenience store on his way to the hotel, captured on security cameras that showed his face clearly despite his attempted disguise. The investigation also revealed the depth of planning that had gone into this crime. Prince Idris had visited the Marina Hotel twice in the weeks before the murder, each time using different entrances and studying the layout. Security footage showed him timing the elevator rides, noting the positions of cameras, and even testing whether his keycard access would be logged in the hotel system. But technology also revealed something the prince hadn't anticipated: his own psychological state during the crime. Voice stress analysis of his phone calls in the days following Myra's death showed patterns consistent with extreme guilt and anxiety. His sleep patterns, tracked through his smartphone's health monitoring app, showed severe insomnia beginning the night of the murder and continuing until his arrest. The forensic accountants discovered another layer of evidence when they analyzed the prince's financial records. He had withdrawn large amounts of cash in the weeks before the murder. Money that was never accounted for and was likely used to purchase the burner phone and pay for other aspects of his cover-up attempt. His credit card records showed purchases of cleaning supplies, new clothes to replace those worn during the crime, and even a consultation with a private investigator about personal security matters. What made this case truly groundbreaking was how it demonstrated the evolution of criminal investigation in the digital age. Traditional detective work, interviewing witnesses, following leads, building theories, had been enhanced by technology that could track a suspect's every movement, analyze their communications, and even monitor their physiological responses to stress. The evidence was so overwhelming that Prince Idris's legal team knew they couldn't argue innocence. Instead, they focused on damage control, hoping to negotiate a plea agreement that might spare their client from the death penalty. But the Al-Hashemi family had other plans, and their decision would determine not just the prince's fate, but send a message about justice that would resonate throughout the region. The courtroom at Dubai courts was packed beyond capacity on the morning of June 12 when Prince Idris Al Zahra's trial began. International media had requested access, but the presiding judge limited coverage to protect the dignity of both families involved. What unfolded over the next 6 weeks would become a landmark case in regional legal history. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating in its simplicity. Chief Prosecutor Khalid al-Mansouri didn't rely on dramatic theatrics or emotional appeals. Instead, he methodically presented the digital evidence like a surgeon dissecting a body, each piece of proof building upon the last until the defendant's guilt became undeniable. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, al-Mansouri began. This case represents the intersection of ancient crimes and modern justice. The defendant believed his status would protect him from consequences. He was wrong. The prosecution's first witness was Dr. Fatima al-Rashid, Dubai's chief forensic pathologist. Her testimony was clinical but powerful as she explained how Myra's injuries told the story of her final moments. The defensive wounds on her hands and arms indicated she had fought desperately. The bruising pattern on her neck showed that her attacker had applied pressure for at least 3 minutes, far too long to claim accident or momentary loss of control. When the DNA evidence was presented, the courtroom fell silent. The probability that the skin cells under Myra's fingernails belonged to someone other than Prince Idris was calculated at 1 in 47 billion. The defense team had no response to numbers that stark. The telecommunications expert's testimony proved equally damaging. Engineer Hassan Al-Zabi walked the court through the cell tower data, showing how the prince's burner phone had pinged towers in a pattern that perfectly matched his movements from the palace to the marina and back. The phone's location data was so precise that investigators could determine he had stopped for exactly 4 minutes at a gas station, time enough to dispose of evidence in a dumpster that was later searched and found to contain blood-stained clothing. Hotel security manager Amira Khalil presented the keycard evidence with devastating clarity. The electronic logs showed not just when Prince Idris entered and left Myra's room, but also revealed his familiarity with the hotel's layout. His direct route to the 12th floor, without hesitation or wrong turns, proved this wasn't his first visit to the property. The defense team, led by internationally renowned attorney Marcus Blackwood, attempted to create reasonable doubt by questioning the chain of custody for evidence and suggesting that the prince's DNA could have been transferred innocently during previous meetings. But their arguments crumbled under cross-examination when prosecutors revealed that Prince Idris and Mira had never been alone together in any documented setting before that fatal night. The most dramatic moment came when the prosecution played audio recordings from the prince's phone calls made in the hours after the murder. Voice stress analysis revealed patterns of deception and extreme anxiety that were consistent with someone who had just committed a violent crime. His attempts to establish an alibi by calling palace staff and asking them to confirm his presence at meetings that had never occurred only strengthened the case against him. The Al-Hashemi family's decision regarding forgiveness became the trial's turning point. Under UAE law, the victim's family has the right to grant forgiveness and accept blood money instead of pursuing maximum punishment. When Myra's father took the witness stand, his words carried the weight of absolute moral authority. "My daughter was murdered by someone she trusted," he said, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. "No amount of money can restore her life or heal our family's wounds. We refuse forgiveness because some crimes transcend personal grief. They wound society itself." The 3-judge panel deliberated for only 2 hours before returning with their verdict. As Prince Idris stood to hear his fate, the courtroom was so quiet that the air conditioning system seemed deafeningly loud. When the chief judge pronounced him guilty of premeditated murder, several people in the gallery began to weep, not just for Mira, but for the destruction of 2 families that had once seemed untouchable. The sentence of life imprisonment, defined as no less than 25 years, marked the end of Prince Idris Al Zahra's privileged existence and the beginning of a new chapter in regional justice. Within hours of the verdict, palace officials released a carefully worded statement expressing profound regret for this tragic personal incident, while emphasizing their full cooperation with judicial authorities. The ripple effects extended far beyond the courtroom. The Al-Zahra royal family immediately implemented new security protocols and behavioral guidelines for all family members, recognizing that modern surveillance technology had fundamentally changed the rules of the game. No longer could status or wealth provide immunity from the consequences of criminal behavior. Soraya al-Hashemi's response to the verdict was both dignified and heartbreaking. She had lost not only her sister but also the future she had believed in. 3 days after the sentencing, she returned the 12-carat engagement ring to the palace through her family's attorney, along with a brief note that simply read, "Some promises cannot be kept." The Marina Hotel, despite replacing carpets and repainting corridors, could never fully escape the shadow of what had happened in room 1247. The keycard timestamps and security footage remained stored in their digital archives, permanent evidence of how technology had captured every detail of a crime that the perpetrator thought he could hide. Perhaps the most poignant moment came on the first Friday after the verdict, when Soraya visited Myra's grave in the early morning hours. She placed a single jasmine blossom on the headstone, a flower that had been Myra's favorite since childhood. The gesture was private, witnessed only by the cemetery's security cameras, but it spoke to a grief that no amount of justice could fully heal. The case became a landmark in regional law enforcement, demonstrating how digital evidence could overcome even the most powerful attempts at cover-up. Police academies throughout the Gulf region now use Prince Idris's case as a teaching example of how modern investigative techniques can solve crimes that would have been impossible to prosecute just a generation earlier. For the al-Hashemi family, the trial's conclusion brought a measure of closure but no real peace. They had chosen justice over forgiveness, sending a message that resonated throughout their society. Some betrayals are too profound to excuse, regardless of the perpetrator's status or the victim's family connections. The marina where Mira died continues to sparkle with city lights reflected on calm water, but those who knew her story see something different in those reflections now. They see proof that in our hyper-connected world, truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. And that's the lesson we should all remember. In an age where every move is monitored, every call is logged, and every action leaves a digital trace, the perfect crime is nothing more than a dangerous illusion. Before you go, I want to thank you for watching this entire video. If the story shocked you as much as it shocked me during my research, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss these incredible true crime stories. And remember, your support helps me continue bringing you the most fascinating criminal cases from around the world, completely free. Until next time, stay safe out there.